This is my case study. It involves the tornado in Joplin, Missouri in May 2011. At 5:17, the tornado warning siren sounded in Joplin. At 5:47 p.m., an F5 tornado began a path of destruction at the west side of Joplin and traveled in a 3/4 mile wide path to the east side of this small Midwestern city. Joplin, Missouri, population 51,000, was devastated by this tornado. It lasted 38 minutes long and was on the ground for 22.1 miles. Lives lost, 161. Injuries, over 1,000. Structures damaged, 7,500. Residents impacted, 17,000. Debris removed, over 3 million cubic yards. City buildings lost, 2 fire stations, senior citizen center, 5 parks were damaged. Of the city infrastructure, sidewalks, streets, and curbs were damaged. Over 2,000 street signs and 59 manhole covers disappeared. The Joplin High School, East Middle School, Franklin Technology Center, 5 elementary schools were destroyed or damaged. The Roy Wood Administration Building was also damaged. As far as electricity goes, 20,000 customers were without service. 100 miles of line was down, almost 3,900 poles were down, and 1,500 transformers were damaged, with 1 substation destroyed and 2 damaged. Water utilities, 4,000 leaking customer lines, 25 torn fire service lines, service center and plant storage building destroyed. Insurance loss was estimated at over $2 billion. Business losses were 531 were destroyed or severely damaged, and 4,500 employees were affected. As far as the healthcare sector, St. John's Hospital was destroyed. St. John's Physician's Office building was destroyed. St. John's Brady Rehab building was destroyed. Freeman Health Hospital West sustained roof and system damage. Ozark Center Behavioral Health System lost 1/2 of its buildings. Every available agency and resource was deployed to assist. There were 2 hospitals in Joplin, and in spite of Mercy Hospital being hit and critically damaged by the tornado, both provided staff and supplies. People were bringing the injured to Mercy Hospital, and initial triage was performed in the parking lot. It supplied the staff for the temporary hospital setup through the development of improved facilities until the hospital itself was rebuilt. The hospital continued paying staff through the entire recovery period. Red Cross provided temporary housing at Missouri Southern State University and assisted with FEMA housing. AmeriCorps organized the volunteers, which assisted in decreasing the confusion. FEMA was already working in Missouri due to severe flooding in the Southwest. They combined the tornado with the flooding and paperwork. This allowed aid to come more rapidly to Joplin. It also caused more bureaucratic challenges. Of private sector businesses contributed to relief and cleanup supplies from home improvement stores. Commercial airlines and home improvement stores worked together to fly in volunteers. Utility companies worked together to quickly restore power. Wireless equipment was given to local emergency officials from the telecommunications companies. Joplin City Council enlisted the assistance of a development firm in order to finance reconstruction projects from private sources. Communication, private individuals set up a Facebook page within hours of the disaster. The ASPR Incident Response Team served as command and control for federal public and health and medical assets. The role that Public Health Department played. The Jasper County Health Department staffed the EOC within minutes after the tornado and continued until the EOC was closed. The local county public health departments, in addition to their mutual aid agreement partners, achieved an amazing amount of recovery work. They worked with the Red Cross to provide shelter and supplies for the human part of the sheltering. The groups made Memorial Hall available for use during an emergency, first as a shelter. Its use was then shifted to being altered to a medical facility. Staffing was provided for the Emergency Operations Center, medical unit, and other health services. Animal control staff, being a part of the Public Health Department, set up the animal shelter near the human shelter on MSSU's campus. 17,000 tetanus shots were provided for all those working in rescue and recovery. They provided over 800 food inspections across the city to prevent any foodborne incidents. These inspections were carried out at previous food establishments and also volunteer food establishments. No foodborne infections were investigated due to the recovery efforts. The Public Health Department assisted in training volunteers working with food to prevent foodborne incidents. The IMAT team from the FDA was also involved in this endeavor. CDC assisted with investigation and response to mucormycosis fungal infections in several residents during the recovery phase. Mosquito fogging and larvicide treatment of a total of over 13,000 acres began after the tornado and continued for 3 months. They provided inspections of child care centers. 17 child care centers were destroyed. Missouri's Department of Social Services was involved with certifying a diversity of different care centers. Due to the interruption of water pipes, there was a general boil water advisory and education program distributed. Medical waste was collected and disposed of properly from destroyed medical, dental, and other associated offices. As part of the local health department, animal control officers and volunteers helped to gather over 1,300 pets. This was accomplished by regular foot patrols through the damaged areas, allowing those involved with cleanup to be aware of their presence and ability to help with any animals found in the debris. These pets were sheltered near the human shelter on the MSSU campus. Animal control actively worked to be able to return over 500 of these pets to their owners. Of the remaining pets found, they worked with humane societies to find homes for the rest. When it came to animals that were injured, a temporary triage clinic was established at the Humane Society. Animal control took charge of removing and disposing of deceased animals found. There were a total of over 1,900 mutual aid hours given from other local health departments. Over 400 fire trucks, search and rescue vehicles came in addition to 70 agencies sending ambulances. The local public health agency led an exercise involving local, state, and federal partners ending on May 20th, 2021, just 4 days before the tornado. This exercise refreshed the agency's responsibilities and allowed for mutual aid agreements to be made and updated. The local health department provided medical assistance, animal control duties, food inspections, and other essential inspections. However, there were said to be staffing issues at the JFO and JDAO offices. Triage was provided by Joplin EMS and mutual aid agencies. Volunteers who arrived were a challenge to organize. AmeriCorps quickly took charge of the volunteers, getting them registered and organized into more utilizable groups. DMOR was overwhelmed by the number of deaths and turned to other agencies for assistance. The initial response had issues with coordination and control at the beginning and continued staffing. There were limited numbers of staff who were qualified for upper level positions, and response was a very long process. Mutual aid agreements in fire and rescue worked well. Information through social media helped. Animal shelter was provided for hundreds of animals by NGOs and volunteers under animal control. Communication and power was quickly restored. There was some confusion with federal, state, and local programs. Dedicated FEMA liaison officers were dispatched to assist with information and institution of programs. Evaluation of community preparedness. The Missouri Hospital Association came up with their own lessons learned report and provided the following information. During a medical surge, security was needed for the entire area. Patient information and tracking was needed during the surge. Drug machines must have backup power or the ability to be accessed in case of a power failure. Alternate care sites needed to be identified in planning prior to a disaster. There should be triage at these sites, even if preliminary triage was given at another location. Assessing electronic patient records was another essential service needed. Due to the number of medical offices destroyed, just being able to access a patient's prescription record could be seriously life-threatening. Since Walmart was also destroyed, redundancy in pharmacy records would be another essential record service. Access to immediate communications is essential. The hospital started with 4 handheld radios right after the disaster. There must be adequate transportation for patients. The need for Mercy Hospital's evacuation put a definite strain on transporting the injured. Water needs deep redundancy in both potable and non-potable systems. Portable toilets are needed immediately. Lighting and power services require deep redundancy. Moving patients from damaged hospital needed flexible alternatives. Portable lighting is needed near the patient's locations. With the loss of information technology, it was suggested to create grab bags made up of paper, pencils, forms, flashlights, batteries, gloves, and masks. Communication was needed with medical staff, emergency staff, and the public. Since Mercy was destroyed, it would have been very helpful to divert the injured to another facility before coming to the hospital. However, staff were able to maintain a triage area in the parking lot. Make sure communication methods are also practiced, where to access the radios, the correct stations to use, and who should have priority to access any radios or phones. Backup systems are needed for water, food, fuel, waste and trash removal, laundry, portable toilets, radiology, and pharmacy. Develop and make to-go disaster kits available: paper, pen, pencils, markers, duct tape, radios, flashlight, MREs, bottled water, batteries, solar chargers for cell phones. Place patient's shoes on the bed with the patient prior to disaster. Bulk slippers need to be made available. Disaster supplies must be accessible during an evacuation. Evacuation alternatives for patients and injured staff should be pre-planned. There was a need to create common gathering points for staff. Search and rescue should be performed for the building itself. Take care of staff first. If staff are injured, they will be unable to care for patients. There should be relief staffing available, and in addition, staffing redundancy for scheduling if the staff are unavailable. If there are relief, redundant, or new staff for an emergency, there should be up-to-date security for this staff. This will allow them access and ensure that there are no issues with unauthorized people accessing off-limit areas or supplies. Local public health agencies need to have social media presence during normal times. This would allow the public to become familiar with the site and to show its reliability in finding information. If a disaster were to occur, these social media sites would be available for trustworthy disaster information to be found. There were issues with staffing for command centers. This disaster recovery lasted an extended amount of time. Since the disaster in Joplin, there has been momentous progress with not only recovery, but rebuilding to make a better community. The City of Joplin website contributed the following information on recovery efforts. The Mercy Hospital was built, including a new medical center. The high schools and elementary schools were built by 2014. The Missouri Department of Natural Resources has given $500,000 for storm improvements and planting of 1,500 trees. A new library was built. FEMA housing was emptied by homeowners having new housing to move into by 2013. Joplin has an Area Citizens Advisory Recovery Team instituted by FEMA. This group helps in developing recovery long-term. FEMA has spent millions of dollars in removing debris, emergency recovery efforts, and long-term recovery projects. Changes to emergency management. Deb Mead's Red Cross volunteer innovated a public multiple agency response center after the tornado. Basically, she was able to bring 48 agencies to be at one central location. This allowed the Joplin residents to find services and needs in one place, easing the stress of receiving aid, requesting paperwork, etc. It would be strategic to improve and strengthen mutual aid agreements within regions, including all aspects of emergency planning: hospital, search and rescue, supplies, staffing, transportation, sheltering, Redundancies could be created in water, power, and communication abilities. Thank you.